Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one.
The introduction. The sun dipped below the horizon in Riverton, casting an amber glow over the small town, nestled between the gently rolling hills. Revered for its picturesque streets and closely knit community, Riverton allowed the outside world to feel like a distant echo. But the serenity was shattered one sultry August evening when the call came through to the local police dispatch. "Officer Mills, you're gonna want to head out to Maplewood Drive. There's been a report of a possible homicide." Neighbors heard a commotion. Their urgency. In the dispatcher's voice hung heavy in the air as Officer Sarah Mills, an 8-year veteran, quickly grabbed her gear and slipped into her cruiser. Little did she know, this call would forever change the fabric of this seemingly idyllic community. Arriving at the scene, Mills was met with a cacophony of sirens, flashing lights, and gathering onlookers, straining to peer past the crime scene tape. There, at the modest 2-story home, lay a pool of crimson spreading like dark tendrils across the white front porch, chilling in its stark contrast to the warmth of the evening. Mills stepped closer, her heart pounding as she surveyed the scene. A man lay lifeless, sprawled awkwardly amidst the shards of shattered glass. An overturned rocking chair nearby, hinting at a struggle turned fatal. The victim's features were barely recognizable through the blood and chaos, but a watch caught in the light glimmered an eerie artifact of a life cut short. The first witness, an elderly neighbor, trembled as memories flooded her mind. I heard shouting, then nothing, just the silence. With these words, the gravity of the night deepened, and a sinister pall loomed over Riverton, drawing the town into a chilling mystery that would unravel in the days to come. The victim. In the days following the tragic discovery on Maplewood Drive, a palpable air of dread settled over Riverton. The streets, once bustling with laughter and life, now felt heavy, each resident wrestling with the unfamiliar specter of fear. At the center of the ensuing storm lay the victim, Mark Delaney, a man whose life had unfolded like the pages of an unassuming book. Aged 33, Mark worked as a mechanic at the local auto shop, his hands stained with the reminders of daily toil. A husband and father to 2 young children, he had been known as a reliable figure in the community. His vibrant laughter and genial demeanor had lent warmth to his corner of Riverton. But under the surface, a series of struggles had begun to surface. As detectives dug into his past, they unearthed additional layers that painted a more complex picture. 5 months prior, Mark had lost his job in a sudden round of layoffs, a blow that sent shockwaves through the family's finances. The subsequent strain on his marriage with Rachel started surfacing in the form of contentious arguments. It was a reality masked by polite smiles at local gatherings and friendly nods on the streets. Yet it was Mark's run-in with a troubled friend, Jason, that captured detectives' attention. Witnesses recalled seeing him arguing heatedly with Jason just days before the murder. Jason had a history marked by sporadic instability and minor run-ins with the law, a stark contrast to Mark's otherwise steady life. The whispers in the community began to shift. Murmurs of betrayal and resentment hung thick in the air as eyes turned toward the presumed friends turned adversaries. Detective Lisa Crane, leading the investigation, began piecing together Mark's final days. She could see a tale more intricate than most. They would soon learn that life's complexities could seep into even the most mundane existence, and that this tiny town held more secrets than it had revealed. Each revelation would challenge perceptions and beliefs in ways they could not yet fathom. The crime scene. Detective Lisa Crane stood at the perimeter of the crime scene, dictating her observations into a small audio recorder. The warm evening air clung to her skin as she scrutinized the details scattered around the Delaney home. The front porch remained a tableau of violence, where the life of Mark Delaney had been abruptly extinguished. Marked with bloodstains, the area told a story all its own, one of struggle and desperation. The overturned rocking chair hinted at a confrontation. She noted the position of the body, sprawled awkwardly near the door, suggesting he had been ambushed as he entered or attempted to leave. A telltale sign of betrayal lingered in the air, and she could almost feel the tension of that last moment before life slipped away. The forensic team was methodical, swarming the scene with precision. Their white suits contrasted sharply with the crimson pool. Latex gloves stretched tightly around their fingers as they collected evidence. Crane's gaze was drawn to the glint of the watch caught in the fading light, now a symbol of time that had run out for Mark. That small piece of metal might reveal more than its mere existence: potential fingerprints, genetic material. Every detail mattered. Outside, the gathered crowd murmured softly, curiosity mingling with dread. Crane observed the faces, looking for any signs of deception or fear. Among them, she spotted Rachel Delaney, Mark's wife, standing pale and trembling a few feet away, her wide eyes glossed with a sheen of terror. It would be crucial to approach her delicate. Her expression bore a cocktail of grief and confusion, emotions intermingling as she tried to comprehend the hell that had erupted in her life. As Crane continued her examination, one of the forensic specialists approached with a small evidence bag. "We found this," he said, presenting a crumpled piece of paper, a handwritten note, partially obscured by blood, containing an address unfamiliar to the detectives. The significance of it was unclear, but it sent a ripple of intrigue through Crane. This was not an isolated murder. Perhaps it was part of something deeper, a thread waiting to be pulled. With each piece of evidence, the darkness deepened, intertwining the lives of those in Riverton in unexpected ways. Dame was afoot, and the heart of the mystery had only just begun to unravel. The early investigation. The following morning, Detective Lisa Crane gathered her team in an unremarkable conference room at the Riverton police station. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, illuminating the faces of her colleagues, each marked by the urgency of the situation. The case had quickly transformed from a routine investigation into a labyrinth of leads and mysteries that enveloped the town like a thick fog. "All right, listen up," Crane began, her tone even but firm. "We have a timeline that needs building, and we need to dig deep into Mark Delaney's life." She glanced at the whiteboard, already filled with names and connections drawn in blue ink. "First, I want background checks on everyone close to him: friends, co-workers, family. We need to know if there were any threats, animosities, or secrets." And as her team sprung into action, Crane's eyes lingered on the crumpled note found at the crime scene. The address scribbled on it caught at her instincts. It belonged to a rundown part of town, an area known for its transient population and shadowy dealings. She made an immediate decision. Hay needed to visit that location. It could yield answers or further complicate the web they were weaving. At that address, a dilapidated storefront loomed ahead, a neglected remnant of what might once have been vibrant commerce. The inside was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of stale cigarettes and desperation. Crane and her partner, Officer Mills, spoke with the current tenants, a group of young men loitering about, their laughter masking tension. After several pointed questions, one of the men finally mentioned Jason. He was in here a lot recently, he said, casting nervous glances around the room. Said he was looking for something money or a deal. Seemed off, yeah. Like he was in over his head. Crane felt the knot in her stomach tight. Jason's recent behavior warranted deeper interrogation, but they wouldn't jump to conclusions just yet. For now, they needed more evidence to connect the dots. As they left the dismal storefront, a swirling gust of wind swept through the streets, mingling with the distant sounds of life, oblivious to the tragedy that had rocked Riverton. Yet with each following step, Crane was driven by a sense of urgency. Shadows loomed over their investigation. And as the pieces of the puzzle began to align, she knew that the heartache within the Delaney family was just the beginning of a long and twisted saga yet to unfold. Each revelation brought them closer to the truth, but it also beckoned the darkness lurking in the unsuspected corners of their town. The dead ends. The days turned into a blur of disbelief and frustration as Detective Crane navigated the winding paths of the investigation. Each turn leading into dead ends that threatened to choke their progress. The small town of Riverton was alive with whispers, and as the media descended upon the story, public pressure mounted to find Mark Delaney's killer. Yet, for Crane and her team, clarity eluded them like smoke slipping through their fingers. They had tracked Jason, Mark's former friend, to a local diner. A greasy spoon on the outskirts of town with a jukebox played a melancholic tune and cigarette smoke clouded the air. When they confronted him, he oscillated between anger and despair. When they confronted him, he oscillated. I didn't do anything, he roared, eyes darting nervously as if the truth was a monster lurking behind him. Crane pushed for details about his relationship with Mark, but the conversation only resulted in half-truths and irritation. Yeah, we had a fight, but it got out of hand, you know? We were just two guys venting. It was a flimsy justification, and it only cast more suspicion. Jason's erratic behavior and defensive posture suggested he was holding back, yet without concrete evidence, they had no real grounds to make an arrest. Back at the precinct, Crane reviewed each lead meticulously, searching for any threads that might lead somewhere unexpected. A check-in with Mark's workplace produced more questions than answers. Coworkers described him as vibrant, driven, but failing to mention any significant disputes. However, one comment lodged itself in Crane's mind, an offhand remark about an argument Mark had with a longtime partner in a recent business deal that fell apart. As they pursued this new lead, the frustration amplified. Calls went unanswered, and when they did track down the business partner, he claimed no knowledge of any animosity. It was business, pure and simple enough in person. Crane couldn't shake the feeling that something was being concealed, a fact lying in wait, desperately buried. Each dead end felt like an anchor weighing them down. the weight of Mark's family's grief pressing on her conscience. Riverton was a town still healing, with each unresolved thread threatening to unravel the fabric of its community. She knew the truth lay somewhere in this tangle of deception. As the night wore on, darkness enveloped her thoughts. The shadows of sleepless nights clouded her purpose. But within that darkness, a flicker of resolve began to burn. She would not relent until she uncovered every stone hiding the truth of what transpired on that fateful night. A break in the case. Just when it seemed the investigation would spiral into a quagmire of uncertainty, a flicker of hope beckoned Detective Crane from the confines of her mounting frustration. It came on an overcast Thursday morning when a tip arrived through an anonymous phone call, cryptic but tantalizing. "I saw something," the voice urged, shaky and barely above a whisper. "It was the night Mark was killed. You need to check by the river." Without hesitation, Crane gathered her team and made their way to the edge of the Riverton River. The water flowed steadily, glistening beneath the muted gray clouds, its dark depths hiding untold secrets. They parked their vehicles atop the rocky embankment and fanned out, scanning the banks for anything unusual. As they searched, Mills spotted something lodged between the rocks, a battered cell phone, streaked with mud and possibly blood. Carefully, they retrieved it, and Crane's heart raced with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. The phone, likely submerged for days, showed signs of water damage, but with the right forensic tools, it could still reveal crucial evidence. Back at the precinct, Crane coordinated with the tech team, who diligently worked to extract data from the device. They unearthed the chain of messages in which Mark had been communicating with a contact labeled simply as J. The exchanges grew intense, laced with frustration. "I can't keep covering for you. You need to stop this," Mark had typed, a sense of desperation resonating in every word. The responses, though more terse and fragmented, hinted at escalating tension. "You know what you're talking about." As the text thread unfolded, it became evident that Mark had been embroiled in something deeper than mere friendship or business, a world of deception and risk, perhaps tied to Jason's erratic behavior. As the last message popped up on the screen, Crane's heart sank. He was sent shortly before the murder, time-stamped a mere hour before his death. "Meet me at Maplewood. We need to talk." Now, the pieces were starting to fit together, shifting from the vague shadows of suspicion to more defined threats. Crane summoned her team urgently, bounding into the conference room, buoyed by renewed purpose. "We need to track down J at all costs. This could be the break we've been waiting for." While answers began to emerge, the realization had hit her like a wave crashing against the shore. This case was not just about the murder of Mark Delaney. It was about uncovering a tangled web of loyalty and betrayal that could potentially ensnare more than one unsuspecting soul in Riverton. They were finally on a path forward, but with it came the weight of responsibility. The truth was often more dangerous than it appeared. The suspect. With the emergence of J from Mark Delaney's messages, the threads of the investigation tightened around a singular figure, Jason Lockhart. His erratic behavior and the visible strain of their prior relationship now appeared more than just remnants of a complicated friendship. Instead, they painted a picture of desperation. After the discovery of the cell phone, a firm resolve washed over Detective Crane. It was time to confront Jason again, This time, with focused intensity, they located him at a local dive bar, the Rusty Screw, where faded neon lights flickered like memories past. The atmosphere was tense, permeated by the haunting notes of a solitary guitar strumming in the background. Jason sat in a booth, lowered eyes tracing the rim of his glass. Mill's instincts flared with unease as they approached. A defensive energy radiated from him like static electricity. Jason Lockhart, Crane stated, her voice steady, betraying none of the nervous energy bubbling beneath. "We need to talk." Jason glanced up, the bravado waning as he saw the determination etched on their faces. "I'm tired of talking. I've told you everything I know." This time, Crane pressed him closer, her voice unyielding. "You were in deep with Mark, weren't you? The text showed he was worried about you." He shifted, beads of sweat collecting on his brow as his eyes darted around the room, wary of the prying ears nearby. "It was just talk. I was having money troubles. But he didn't understand. He was supposed to help me, but it spiraled." "You think I killed him?" His shock sounded too practiced, too rehearsed. Mill seized the opening. "We got the messages, Jason. You met him the night he died. Just before the murder. You need to tell us everything." "You couldn't have forgotten those last words." Jason's facade crumbled, the gravity of his cooperation slipping through like sand. "Look, we had an argument, all right? He was fed up with me asking for help. I didn't mean for it to go that far. We fought." "Fought? In what way?" Crane probed, her eyes narrowing, drawing on every instinct honed through her years of experience. "Did words cross into violence?" "I don't know. You got heated?" "No. I left before anything serious happened." "I swear." Jason's voice trembled, the weight of fear slipping through his defenses. "I don't know who else he was involved with. Please, you have to believe me. I wouldn't hurt Mark." Crane felt the tension shifting. The pieces of Jason's alibi were fragile, teetering on the brink of collapse. There was more here, layers to his motive, possibly laced with intimidation from others, beyond their understanding. "It's time for you to come with us, Jason," Crane commanded, her pen poised to capture every detail of his recounting the truth. Obscured by the haze of denial, was still ensnared within his grasp. As they led him to the cruiser, uncertainty thickened the air, the walls closing in around Jason whispered of desperation. But as Crane looked into his eyes, she recognized the telltale marks of fear. Fear that revealed possible truths he dared not speak aloud. In Riverton, shadows loomed large, and while they might have captured one suspect, there remained the chilling awareness that the danger was far from over. The trial. Months had passed since the fateful evening on Maplewood Drive, yet the shadows of that night lingered heavily over Riverton. The case against Jason Lockhart was finally set to be heard in court, and the small town buzzed with anticipation. The local courthouse, an aged building with columns that stood firm against the passage of time, became a microcosm of communal tension. Families gathered in the hallways, eyes alight with a mix of conviction and anxiety. After all, they were united by grief and questions that remained unanswered. Detective Crane settled into her seat, absorbing the atmosphere of the courtroom as they prepared to present the state's case. The air crackled with tension, a sense of collective holding of breath as the judge entered, followed by the clinking of gavel strikes, establishing order as the trial commenced. The prosecution laid out a methodical case, revealing the text messages discovered on Mark's phone that chronicled his growing anxiety about Jason's financial troubles and erratic behavior. Witness accounts from the bar and the diner were pieced together like an intricate puzzle: alcohol, desperation, and betrayal, leading to unrestrained rage on that fateful night. Crane leaned forward as the prosecutor detailed the events leading to Mark's death, painting a vivid picture of the struggle on the porch, the chilling transformation of mere conversation into lethal confrontation. The evidence was largely circumstantial, bolstered heavily by Jason's inconsistent statements that left the jury with a sense of disbelief. Jason, seated calmly at the defendant's table, radiated an air of defiance, tinged with apprehension. His attorney adopted a strategy of doubt and alternative narratives, depicting Jason as a victim of circumstantial heartbroken over a fractured friendship and struggling under the weight of mounting pressure. As witness after witness took the stand, Jason's pleas reverberated in the courtroom, a desperate echo of his insistence on innocence. At the end of the first day, Crane found solace in the small conversations with family members affected by the tragedy. Mark's wife, Rachel, remained a steady presence in the gallery. Quiet resolve etched on her countenance. Her strength was palpable, radiating through tears as she clung to the hope that justice would prevail. As the trial wore on, however, cracks began to form in the prosecution's case. Expert witnesses introduced doubts about the timeline, suggesting that the evidence did not conclusively prove a murder charge. The tides of the trial began to shift ominously as Jason's lawyer presented alternate theories, throwing suspicion on Mark's character and raising questions about other potential threats he might have faced. The jury was sent to deliberate, and the palpable tension morphed into a suffocating silence. As the hours stretched on, Ryan felt the weight of every unanswered question that loomed within the courtroom. Was Warren? The truth felt elusive, tangled in the shadows that had swallowed Mark Delaney's life, and she braced herself, knowing that justice could slip through their fingers. When the verdict finally echoed through the hall, the weight of it crashed over the room, carving the wavering line between guilt and innocence. The outcome would resonate through their small town, etching the memory of that confrontation deep within Riverton's heart. Amid uncertainty, all that lingered was the haunting of unresolved truths, leaving behind a landscape forever altered by loss, doubt, and a yearning for clarity that seemed as elusive as the river that coursed through their lives. The aftermath. The gavel struck one last time, sealing the fate of Jason Lockhart, and a collective breath of Riverton hung heavy in the air as the jury delivered their verdict. A profound stillness enveloped the courtroom, each person grappling with the echoes of their own emotion. Jason would be convicted of manslaughter, a charge that carried significant time but left behind lingering questions of intent and morality. The semi-darkness settled like a shroud over Riverton. The shadows of that night still clung to the fringes of their consciousness. In the following weeks, Detective Crane navigated the town with a sense of somber duty. Each interaction, every nod of recognition, felt weighty as residents continued to grapple with the absence of Mark Delaney. Memorials sprang up organically, creatively adorned spaces in local parks and community centers, where people gathered to remember him, to honor the laughter that once rippled through their streets. They transformed grief into shared resolve. Inside the police department, whispers of change echoed. While the case had closed with a verdict, It had exposed evident fissures in the fabric of trust within the community. Detective Mills took the lead on outreach, desiring to find ways to heal the rifts that had surfaced. "Let's organize a community forum," she suggested. "People need to talk, to process all of this together." Crane could see how the trial had animated those hidden fractures beneath the surface. The need for transparency grew urgent, and she agreed. The town hall meeting was scheduled, a platform for residents to voice their feelings, concerns, and hopes. On the evening of the forum, the room buzzed with uncertainty, anxiety intertwining with a desire to connect. Families filed in, piercing the veil of discomfort with whispered introductions and tentative smiles. Crane and Mills set the stage, drawing on their experience to foster an environment rich in openness. People spoke, some in tears, others with resolute determination, all with a shared recognition of collective loss. Rumors were laid to rest, and fears discussed. Mark's absence echoed, yet through the dialogue, a glimmer of hope emerged. Together they expressed a longing for healing, an understanding that the wounds ran deep, but the town they loved could find a way to stitch itself back together. As laughter mingled with tears, the emotional release began to cleanse the town's collective heart. Over time, Crane noted that while scars would remain, Riverton could redefine its narrative shift from tragedy to resilience. With sun shining down upon the gathering, there was a sense of renewal, like the first bloom of spring after a long winter. For Crane, closing the case on Mark Delaney's murder was merely the beginning of another struggle, one against the silence that often shrouded grief. As she walked away from the forum that night, resolution took root in her heart. She would keep the memories alive, preserve the narratives that shaped their community, and more importantly, she would champion those stories, for they were the threads woven through the tapestry of Riverton, binding them together beyond just loss, aiming towards hope. The aftermath would not be easy, but in the depths of sorrow, Crane witnessed the resilience of the human spirit and the strength found in community in all its beauty and complexity. Reflection. As winter settled in around Riverton, Detective Lisa Crane found herself at the confluence of sorrow and renewal. The aftermath of Mark Delaney's murder felt heavy, yet the community had navigated toward healing. Reflecting upon the months that had passed, she could almost hear echoes of laughter, distant yet forever etched in the town's fabric. The faces of residents she had seen in anguished grief were slowly transforming, embodying resilience and a fighting spirit. Crane had become more than just an investigator in the aftermath. She had grown into a listener, a storyteller, weaving together the narratives of those touched by tragedy. She walked the streets, cradling memories of Mar and the lessons learned amidst darkness. Each interaction deepened her understanding of loss, the significance of community, and the fragile threads that bind them together. Even in adversity,